welcome to the first Open Thor Living. I'm Patrice Lequer, I'm the General Manager.
During my presentation, you will have the opportunity to post your questions in the Q&A. The Q&A can be found at the right-hand side of the screen, and you can post your questions there and during the presentation, but especially at the end of the presentation, we will be able to answer a few of these questions posted in the Q&A. So let's start with the basics. What is Open Thor Living Lab? Open Thor Living Lab is a state-of-the-art infrastructure with one big purpose, that is to facilitate innovation in a real-world setting and to help to accelerate the energy transition. You see on the picture the beautiful site of Thor Park in Genk. That's where a part of the Living Lab is located. You see it's an old coal mine site that has been reused and redeveloped into a campus, a new park, a business park. Open Thor Living Lab is an initiative with 3 shareholders. That's both Thor Park itself is a shareholder, the city of Genk, but also Energyville, the research institution, is part of our shareholders and one of the main drivers from the initiative of Open Thor Living Lab. So why did we start Open Thor Living Lab? Open Thor Living Lab has 3 purposes. Actually, the first one is to help testing and validation of energy solutions, but together with end users. That's why we call ourselves a living lab. We're not just a lab as such, but we also involve the end users, both B2C and B2B, into the validation and the testing. The aim is, of course, also to accelerate the market introduction of products and services in the energy transition by using the model of open innovation. And we want to do it with an integrated approach, meaning that we also want to involve research, government, end users, and industry in the so-called quadruple helix structure. The impact that we want to achieve with Open Thor Living Lab goes beyond just introducing new products and solutions to the market, but we also want to provide impact on a social level, for instance, with certain projects within the Open Thor Living Lab. End-user, consumer, residential context, highly consulted, and that's an example of where the impact of the energy transition is measured and guided in a specific project. And another thing that we want to achieve, of course, is that we want to strengthen the industry and research, both on Flemish and EU, that by using open innovation. So what is available today, if we dive into the Living Lab, for you as research partner or as industry partner, the good news is that the Living Lab is not just a future dream, it's already existing. I will show you in the coming minutes how it is existing. Before we go into the future. How can you look at the lab? The first view or the first lens that you can use to understand the lab is actually the geographical one. Geographical meaning we have quite a wide scope with the Open Thor Living Lab. The green area is the actual scope, the total scope of the Living Lab. Which is divided in 4 geographical zones. Starting at the right, you see that the Living Lab has a science park included. That's also where the headquarters of Energyville are located. At the left of that, you see there is a business park, also part of Open Thor Living Lab, which is the Thor Business Park of Thor Park. But you also see that we leave the scope of Thor Park and we go into the residential area, left top. With 2 actual districts, New Texas and the Garden Cities, which are typical residential areas from the past, from the coal mine past here in Genk. And you see there is an even more exciting zone on top of that, which is the zone around KRC Genk. I think most of you know the well-known football club with its stadium and training facilities. This is the total scope of Open Thor Living Lab at the moment. In which you see we have a very wide mix of both science, business park, residential, and even a mental with the part of KRC Genk. And that's also why we can say that we are a living lab, because we have all these roles and specific domains available in the lab. If we zoom in a bit more on what is currently available in all these elements, you see a few thematic zones emerge. We have a thematic zone, for instance, in the middle of the science park around construction and renovation. Next to that, we are actually building for the moment, or should say, Hasselt and Soltech are building a solar test field, which is around solar. In the past, in the recent past, in the last years, there has been a lot of work on a thermal network. So we also have a zone around heating and cooling. And there was already an EV charging area available in the past, and it still is in one of the buildings of Energy Hub. You see that I draw there a demonstration area, Energy Hub. That's one of the elements that we're going to discuss later today, because that will actually include access to all the other zones to the right. And left hand in the residential area, you see our zone, which is mainly around renovation, residential renovation in the residential district. So if we look into a few of the projects, as I said, it's not a pipe dream, it's a reality. The lab is existing today, it is available today. There are quite some projects already running in each of the geographical zones or each of the thematic zones. Smart charging infrastructure is one of the examples where a combination of EV and management solutions for the EV charging poles is available for testing and for research. All of the projects that are run within the Open Thor Living Lab also have one data backbone in common, which is called SmartThor. What does that mean? It means that there is a platform available which connects to all the projects which are run on the Living Lab assets and which collects data and which grows the data set, not only with the Open Thor Living Lab data, but also with external data. So you have a data layer available in the lab. Another project, and for those who have visited perhaps the site, it's a very recognizable landmark almost, I would say, Storiak. These are two residential buildings, houses, identical, and they used to test and compare techniques, building techniques, facade techniques, and a few more. But it also includes a working place for construction robotics. So imagine robotics building walls or building elements of houses. The more recent project, we launched that in 25 in Open Thor Living Lab, is Collector. Collector is a low temperature thermal network which actually connects a few of the buildings in the science district. And that's also a very good demonstration of how this lab is a living lab, because it is used by the buildings. The buildings are used by real people, workers, researchers, and so on, to heat and cool the buildings which are connected to Collector. But at the same time, Collector is available for research, both by industry partners and research partners. We will add a new asset, and that's part of the scoop today, which is called DemonstraThor. You see the naming a lot with Thor. That's no coincidence to make the link back to Thor Park. DemonstraThor will be a new demonstration area, including a DC network, which I will explain later. And you see there are two more coming, which is called Constructor, which is actually almost finished. It will be finished in 25, which is a test facility for climate neutral building. And I mentioned it earlier, into PV, which is demonstration area, validation area for PV, for solar panels. That gives you, I think, a good idea of what's happening on the science district, but I just want to come back also on the residential area. That's where you will find the Open Lab project. Open Lab is a multi-year project running to help renovate the houses in the residential area. So what we're trying to achieve with the Open Thor Living Lab is actually that we build up from all these projects and from additional investments a unique test and demonstration infrastructure, grouped in a few domains, in a few thematical areas, starting with heating and cooling, continuing with electric vehicle charging, batteries, renovations, around energy hubs, renewable energy, and of course, all supported by the smart data layer and the SmartThor system, making data available from the labs. That's our purpose also of Open Thor Living Lab, to not just gather these assets for industry and research, but also make them more available and extend them. I mentioned a lot of projects. I try to be really sober in the naming as well, but there is a lot happening in the lab. If you want to have more details on any of the projects that I just briefly mentioned, like Constructor, for instance, or Open Lab or SmartThor, I would advise you to go to openthor.be. You will find the description and the contact persons there for the individual projects which are currently active in the lab. In case of any question or any general question, you can always, of course, contact us on info@openthor if you would not find the project information that you need. So let's continue a bit to growing the lab. I just want, before we go into this part, to repeat the fact that you can pose any kind of question also on Open Thor Living Lab, the basics in the Q&A. So don't hesitate to post your question. Growing the lab, we're going to do with two new assets, as I already mentioned, a new demonstration area and a new DC network. To do that, we got a direct investment from the Flemish government early in 2024 that has been done together with collaboration with Energieville, of course. Energieville has been the driving part to get us into this extension. It's a substantial extension to reinforce the lab as such and to add these two new assets to the group of assets which are already available. So let's dive into the two new assets. I will use the name DemonstraThor for the demonstration area and DC network for the network, the microgrid on site. First, perhaps the timeline. We started both projects and we are today in the design phase. Design phase means that we are with a design agency and engineering company. We are now building and designing what we're going to build. This is a very interesting phase, and that's also why this webinar is very important for us. If any feedback from both industry or research can still be taken aboard, so don't hesitate also in your questions or in your feedback after the webinar to give us any ideas or questions that you might have around these two assets. The idea is to start building mid-26 building time, and we hope to have it operational by the end of 27. For industry and for researchers, that means that you can, after 27, starting 28, January 28, you should be able to run your demonstration or validation projects in both assets, on top of all the other assets which you can already use in Open Thor Living Lab. So I'm coming back to the thematic zones, just to give you a bit of a situation here. You see again the Open Thor Living Lab with the thematic zones. I explained already that we were building an energy hub / demonstration area. That's the so-called DemonstraThor, which is in between the business domain, of Thor Park and the research district of Thor Park. The DC network will run on the science part of Thor Park, of the Open Thor, and it will also connect to the construction renovation zone and to the solar zone. That means that any future equipment or any future project that would like to test, for instance, a new setup combining solar and a battery, could use both DemonstraThor to place the battery and the new solar technique on the solar field of Umas. So what is DemonstraThor? This is an aerial view in which you see the red area is where we're going to build the DemonstraThor. I included this because I want to highlight something very specific. It's in the middle of Thor Park. For those of you who know Thor Park, it's a very iconic site in which past and history collide into the future. And it's actually a very central location. It's a very visible location, and that's also the idea behind DemonstraThor. This is the place where both research, government, citizens, users, both work together and industry work together on the future of the energy transition. So the location is not a coincidence. It's a very important visible location just behind the iconic building of Thor Central, which is the main building of Thor Park. So if you take that same square and you translate it to a floor plan, I think it will give you a bit more of an idea of what DemonstraThor is. I will start at the right-hand side. What you see there are a few of the containers labeled 20 and 40. Actually, these are the test positions that we will offer on demonstrator. And I'm talking about the word test positions. That means that in such a test position, you can position a 20-foot container or a 40-foot container or any other combination. But Steven, my colleague, will explain that later, for your testing and connected to our backbone. And our backbone being both the DC network, the new DC network, but also to collector. Collector, the thermal network, which is operational since early 25, will be accessible for demonstrators. So you could run the test, position your container with your solution there, and use both the AC or DC network and at the same time collector for any heat or cooling purposes that you might have in your project. You also see there are a few cars parked there. We will deduplicate also a new EV zone there as well for any experiments and projects around EV equipment, chargers, combination chargers and battery. That's also probably left some space there. In the building in blue, it's very small for you guys, but in the building in blue, you will also find 2 internal test positions for equipment that cannot be containerized and that cannot be connected to the backbone of the demonstrator. And that needs an internal test position. So we will have quite some external test positions for containers and 2 internal test positions for internal experiments or projects. So how does that look like? These is just artistic impressions. These are not the final plans, but it gives you an idea on how is this situated on Thor Park for those who know the location. You see the iconic building, of course, of Thor Park and of Thor Central, sorry, and just behind you see that we integrated very well in the environment our demonstrator asset. You see the same containers coming back as examples in which you will be able to work on your project or experiment together with us during the time of your project. You see that we very naturally integrated into the green of Thor Park. For those who haven't visited Thor Park, it's worth the visit as well, just for the combination of both the natural environment and the science and business environment as well. I'll let Steven now explain a bit more about the DC network. Go ahead, Steven.
Okay, thank you very much, and welcome from me as well to everybody in the audience. I would like to give you a bit more insight in the DC network itself. One of the novelties or experimental things that we are doing is actually building the DC network on a public domain, which is already a big step forward in what is right now possible or common industry practice in Belgium. And we will connect demonstrator with Toriak and Constructor, and also in Constructor, the construction zone and the test buildings. So there we will be able to change the AC net connection from this test fields into a DC connection that can be integrated together with into PV solar test field production or batteries that are placed on demonstrator. So typical projects, there are of course lots of them that you can think of, and if you have projects that you are thinking of, please do not hesitate to post them on the Q&A to see if it's something viable for what we're building here. But megawatt charging buses or trucks is certainly something that is coming up and is getting more traction, and there's more requirements for the industry for this megawatt charging types. Battery containers in parallel or higher voltage levels is for sure also something that the industry is looking for. Development of autonomous charging infrastructure and connect your system to smart building infrastructure. Those are all kinds of testings or test capabilities that we are offering within our DC network. So also your solutions that you would like to test on DC are for sure welcomes on our Thor Park demonstrator, which has the DC capabilities. So the DC network itself is built up of something where we aim for for maximum flexibility. So we are building with the future in mind. We don't know yet where we will end. Of course, we will be limited by what is known as LVDC, so low voltage DC, which has its threshold at around 1500 volts. And we will also offer 750 volt DC capabilities. There are already capabilities within the Energyville labs. And of course, as Patrice explained, Energyville is one of the main drivers of this project. So what we are trying to do, or what we are offering, is really an extension to what is possible in the energy DC lab, the low voltage energy DC lab, where typically they can go up to 750, but in lower power ranges, or 350 with a bit more higher power ranges. But at Demonstrator, we will have the possibility to offer higher voltages and higher power to accommodate your testing. We are going for interconnection in the test locations. We are going for a cabinet approach, so for the higher power requirements. So we are very flexible in building your test equipment or equipment that you would like to validate into our DC network. For the lower voltages and the lower powers, we will have fixed TAPF points where you can quite easily connect to the DC network. So that's for the DC network. And then we go to Demonstrator, whereby we will also offer a connection capability to the AC grid still at quite high power levels, because we understood, or we understand, that for startups, scale-ups, higher power connection is not also always readily available. So it might be very interesting to have those quite high power capabilities in a demonstrator area that you can use and rent from us. So we also have the AC DC connection, and we will build in thermal buffering capacity. So if you would like to, for instance, test the heat pump, whereby extra buffering, thermal buffering capacity would be required, those are also things that we can accommodate onto our demonstrator field. EV charging, Patrice already mentioned it. We will have an area on our demonstrator site to install charging ports. So if you have some innovative ideas or products that you would like to validate or demonstrate or test, Demonstrator is for sure something where that can be done. On the bottom of the slide, I also showed you some of the already well-known Lego blocks, concrete Lego blocks. That is something that we envision to use on our demonstrator test field. So Patrice already talked about some test locations, which will have more or less standard dimensions for in-container setups with a 20-foot or 40-foot container, but we would like to aim for maximum flexibility, and therefore we have decided to use these kind of fire-resistant Lego concrete bricks, whereby we maintain the highest level of flexibility in our test field. So also bigger, more space requiring installations can be used and installed at the demonstrator.
Okay, so we go back to test locations. The test locations can be rented as of end of 27, and I want to give a bit more insight in how that will work. We will have at least 6 test locations, 2 internal or external test locations. Typically, you will rent this for your research project or for your industry project or for a collaboration between the two during the duration of your project. So that means that you will pay up a monthly fee to Open Thor Living Lab, and we will provide you with the secured location, and we will provide you with some additional services on which I will come back later. As we have shown, we have room for 20-foot, 40-foot containerized solutions. So imagine if you want to test a new type of battery, you can containerize it and we can discuss in which kind of test position we can place it for the duration of your project. But we do have, of course, also the flexibility in floor space of test locations. With the concrete Lego blocks that Steven just shown, we can also combine test locations. If you have a very different footprint of your equipment, we recently had a project which had a 5 on 5 square meters footprint, which is typically totally different than a containerized solution. That would be perfectly achievable if we remove one of the brick walls. We could create also space for such an experiment. So it's a flexible setup. I want to come back on two very important elements, of course. The connections to both the thermal network and the DC network for your setup are available. So if that's part of the experimentation, validation, or demonstration that you would like to do on DemonstraThor, take into account that these are available. Discuss scope for your project. So what are the services that we provide? We of course provide test location, including the access management, to make sure that your equipment and your project setup is safe and secure. One of the things that we're currently doing in preparation of the opening end of 27, of course, is that we try to pre-approve experiments. Why is that important? We try to find already before you approach us with a project what can be done on DemonstraThor and what cannot be done. Of course, there will be limits, either from the permits that we get or either from the legislation that we have to follow as well as a test area. And we want to make sure that these are clear upfront. So we provide you with the list of experiments that can be done as a list of possibilities. Open Thor Living Lab and his partners will also help you, of course, with the setup of your project installation. And you will connect it to a DC network or you will connect it to a connector. These are all very specific connections, and we will help you get your installation up and running. There are, of course, also very important optional services, and I want to mention again Energy Bill, the combination of 4 Flemish institutes that work together around and the energy transition. This can be, especially for the industry, of course, can be your partner as well to do your research. So imagine you want to validate a certain scenario, you want to validate a certain technology. You could not only opt for using Open Thor Living Lab and our infrastructure, but you could also opt for collaborating together with Energy Bill on the research. The same goes, for instance, of course, with your partners. The good news is that we already see projects approaching us which are highly focused on collaboration. What does that mean, collaboration? That means combining existing battery technology with new solar technology, for instance, or that means combining other technologies in a consortium of industry partners and demonstrating that on DemonstraThor. And that's also the type of projects that we would like to encourage, in which multiple parties work together using the maximum of possibilities that we provide on DemonstraThor. So this gives you an idea on how to use the test locations. Typical projects, I think we already mentioned a few, but I just briefly want to come back on it. But these are just examples. We look forward, of course, to your examples, to your ideas, to your ongoing experiments or planned experiments for future projects. Ideally, we focus on a quite high TRL, meaning 6 or higher. The ideal project uses as much as possible multiple energy sources. It's not an obligation, but it helps you to get the maximum from the demonstration area DemonstraThor, or uses different technologies in a combination, especially on high power levels, as Steven has already explained. We provide you, of course, with a safe environment for testing and validation. We don't want you to test an experiment in your own industry location. We provide you an environment in which you can do the testing and validation. Also for experiments which are potentially not possible even in your own. And typically, the projects that we would like to see are also collaborations. Multiple partners, including our research partner, Energy Bill, or other research partners. So don't hesitate to post the projects in the chat. Of course, we did this update today, not just to inform you on what we're building in the Open Thor and what we provide today, but we also have a question for you. And the first one is on the partners that we want to see. As if you look at the history of Open Thor Living Lab, even before it was a separate company, since last year we are a separate company with the 3 shareholders, Torpark, Genk, and Energyville. Even before that, there was a very large set of projects, research projects already running. In those projects powered by Energyville and the partners of Energyville within Energyville, there was already a tradition of using project partners. And you see some names there. These come, for instance, from the Open Lab project, but also from the Toriak project and a few others. This tradition of using partners, we also want to continue for the next 2 assets that we're going to add, the demonstrator and the DC network. So what are the opportunities that we have today? We have 3 levels of partnership opportunities that you can build on with Open Thor Living Lab today. I just want to mention the middle one, the project partner. Project partners are related to the asset as such of Open Thor. What does a project partner do? Well, today we are looking for additional project partners for demonstrator and the DC network. A project partner can contribute both by physical assets, their technology, their products, their solutions, but also via a combination with expertise or specific expertise. So if you are developing, for instance, today, something software related for DC networks, we would also be interested to see how you could be a project partner in Open Thor Living Lab for these 2 assets. I've listed a few domains here in which we're still looking for project partners. Of course, the list can be longer. It depends a bit on who's available and who's interested in doing this, but at least we're looking for project partners around battery technology, PV, DC technology, heating and cooling, and of course, electric vehicle charging, not just cars, but also, of course, heavy transport, cars and buses, for instance. So what would a project partner typically do? Well, of course, if you become a project partner of Open Thor Living Lab, I just shown you the beautiful location of demonstrator in the middle of Torpark, in the ecosystem of Energyville, Torpark, and Open Thor Living Lab. You will get a lot of visibility. You will be getting the visibility you deserve within the projects, but also in the future projects, the project that will use demonstrator. From a project partner, ideally, we would like to see a contribution in kind of equipment, so that he's also involved actually in building a demonstrator and in building the DC network. But we will also position project partners as the preferred partners for future projects. So imagine after 27, we are ready with building demonstrator, we are ready with building the DC network. Typically, a project partner will also be involved in the projects, the demonstration projects, the validation projects, which comes after that date of delivery. There is, of course, a lot to say about the project partners. So for this one, I would like to say, if you're interested to discuss, to explore the dimension of being a project partner, we preferably like to do that in a one-on-one discussion. There is only one thing that you need to remember, or actually 2 things that you need to remember from the webinar, but info at Open Thor is one of them. If you think you would be interested to become a project partner in one of the domains that I've just shown you, please contact us at info at Open Thor, and we will schedule one-on-one. We have reached the end of the short introduction of what is happening today, what is available in the lab, and what will be available in the future with the 2 new assets. I hope you have posted a lot of questions in the chat, but I'm looking at Steven also to see if there are any questions that we can all address already today. If you have a question that you cannot address here today for any reason, don't hesitate. Info at Open Thor is the place to be, or you can find perhaps the information on openthor.be.
Okay. We have a question in the Q&A, so I would like to post that one. I have an idea for a project with electric trucks. How can we start a collaboration?
Yeah, that's basically how we would like to see coming the questions. If you know what is your idea, the best thing to do is just approach us via info at Open Thor, and we will start doing an intake, a briefing to see, okay, what is available today, how can we support, what is the actual solution that you need at our site? Is it a combination of infrastructure or is it a combination of research? And once that is clear, we will make a proposal for you and get you running as soon as the infrastructure is available for your project work. So basically, with that kind of questions, just approach us on info. No more questions?
So far, there are no more questions in the Q&A.
Also, for basic questions on Open Thor collaborations or any other ideas that you might have, please use the info@openthor.be. I think we can wrap up then here. Thanks for your time, and I hope it gives you an idea of what is happening on Thor Park. I always recommend also a visit on Thor Park for those really interested. It's even more convincing when you see the scale of the lab, the environment of the lab. When you meet the partners like Thor Park, Energyville on site, you will be impressed with what is happening on Open Thor Living Lab. And until then, I would like to thank you again for your time, and I hope it has inspired you to come up and show your project on Open Thor installation. Thank you.